it's not fun. It's not nearly the same experience. So if anytime doing any of this, anybody want to say something, anybody want to unmute yourself and ask a question or join in on the conversation, go ahead. Please feel free. Actually, I prefer it that way. ภาษาไทยก็ได้ครับไม่ serious. Okay. แป๊บนึงนะครับ All right. So a little bit about myself before we begin. ผมชื่อโอโหนะครับ It's kind of a weird name. I know. You call me Oho. I was born and raised here, and then I went to high school in the U.S. I was in Northern California, around San Francisco area. All right. I was in the U.S. I was about 14 at the time. And then so I was there for 4 years, and I went to UC Irvine, which is down in SoCal, and I was also there for 4 years. And right now, I'm currently, like I said before, I mentioned just now, I'm finishing up my MBA ที่ศาสินนะครับตรงจุฬาแล้วก็ I have a restaurant. So if any of you crave Italian food, it's on Rama 9. Hit me up. My phone number is at the beginning of the page. Doesn't matter. All right. So I was lucky. So I'm going to break this talk down into 2 parts. All right. I'm going to talk about my trip, my experience when I first went to the US, what it was like, how easy it was or how difficult it was, and then my experience coming back in. Now, my experience coming back into Thailand, sure, I was returning home. I was coming back home to Thailand, but at the same time, it could also be applied for tourists because we went through the same process. Okay. And just with a show of hands, I'm guess and how many people in here out of the 40 students in here, how many of you have been to the US? Okay. So a couple. There's some. Perfect. So you know what it's like over there. So when I went, so Operation 1, getting vaccinated. I'm going to show this video in the beginning. It's only a minute long. Just have a look at it. It kind of sums up what exactly vaccine tourism is. I mean, Kieran already talked about it. I'm sure you guys know exactly what it is. But I'm just going to show this one real quick. Let's see if I can get this to play. Is it playing on you guys' part? I don't think it is.
This summer, you're going to see tourism come alive again in New York City. You're going to see a lot of jobs come back because of it. We want to go the extra mile, make it easy for tourists. If they're here, get vaccinated while you're here. It makes sense to put mobile vaccination sites where the tourists are. That is good for all of us that they get vaccinated. It's good for them. It's another reason to be here and know you're going to be taken care of. So we're going to be setting up these mobile vaccination sites where tourists go. We'll be using the J&J vaccine. We'll be in Times Square, Brooklyn Bridge Park, Central Park, the High Line, a variety of locations. And we're going to be working with the state of New York. We need the state to alter the rule that will allow us to provide vaccination to folks from out of town. But we think this is a positive message to tourists. Come here, it's safe, it's a great place to be, and we're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure you get vaccinated while you're here with us. So this is going to start as soon as we get that approval. We're ready to go this weekend. We want to welcome more and more people into the vaccination effort.
Okay, so what do you guys think of that? That little short 1-minute video. What do you guys think of it? Any comment? It's going to be hard. So essentially, that's what it was, right?
To go, like, I think they are encouraging tourists to go there.
Okay, exactly, right? Exactly. And they were pushing it. So the guy said, they needed different parties to work together to make it happen as soon as possible, right? Because they realized that it was a good way to take advantage of the pent-up demand. So this was something that I brought up as well when Kieran was talking, right? It was a pent-up demand. A lot of people wanted to get vaccinated. A lot of people from various countries around the world, including Thailand, maybe they don't have access to the good stuff, for example, the mRNA or the better type of vaccines, or the country just perhaps, like, for example, in Taiwan, my friends also left Taiwan, went to the US to get vaccinated, right? It's not just Thailand, it's all over. So that is exactly what vaccine tourism is. And my family and I, we had the opportunity to go, and we did just that. We were there for about 3 months and 2 weeks in total. It was one of the longer trips we've taken, the longest for my parents for sure. And so the journey went like this. Preparation before departing, it was very simple. I'm sure for people who have been to the US before, you guys have done this stuff, except with the added part of getting tested 72 hours before flying out. So in this case, okay, we got tested. We went to a hospital โดนแยงคอแล้วก็โดนแยงจมูกไม่สนุกใครที่เคยโดนแยงมาแล้วก็คงรู้ว่ามันไม่สนุกเดี๋ยวร้องไห้ and yeah, that lady went pretty deep. I still remembers me. Yeah, it was painful. It was painful. But anyway, so we got the fit to fly certificate, right? And then with that, we went to the airport. And just by the way, the US also actually accepts antigen tests. That it's not painful. Nothing goes up into your nose. But in our case, the airline ANA, they required a PCR, so we did the PCR anyway. So we got to the airport, we just presented them the flight ticket, the test result to show that we were not COVID positive, and that's it. And we just went. Now at the time that I went, I wasn't vaccinated at all. Sinovac, Astra, nothing. I was completely unvaccinated. My dad was as well. My mom, she had Sinovac at the time. She had 2 shots of Sinovac already. So it was something, but still we wanted to go and get something a little bit stronger. So by the time we got to the US, everything was completely normal. Everything was completely basic. If you had been to the US before, a couple of years prior to the COVID pandemic, it was the exact same thing. There was a form you had to fill out, right? The basic immigration form. So you fill that out, you go through immigration, and during the immigration, they'll ask you questions like, oh, how long are you going to visit for? What are you planning to do over here? When are you going back? How much cash do you have? So in this case, we brought quite a bit of cash because we knew that we were going to be there for some time. We knew that we were going to be there for, usually when we stay there for a month. Well, when I went to school, I stayed longer. With my parents, every time they go, they would stay for a month. This time they were planning to stay for a couple of months, so we brought some cash. So we declared, and generally, usually they might be a little bit more skeptical. Why do you have so much cash, this and that? But in this case, they didn't even ask question. They didn't even ask. It was because they realized they wanted our money. It was obvious. It was obvious. If tourists were coming in to get vaccinated, unvaccinated or not, they didn't really care. Bringing money for them, that's good for them. That's good for their economy. So always remember, right? A person's spending is another person's income, and they realized this and they took advantage of it. So COVID vaccine in the US. In Thailand, it's a little bit harder to get vaccinated, right? You have to, depending on if you have connections or depending on if you know the hospital and this and that, you might have to wait for it to be your turn, go to the station, wait in line. In the US, it was exactly like what Kieran said. So Kieran said that in Ireland, his country right now, you can walk to any pharmacy and they will give you the COVID shots for free. Just like that, right? Fill the registration form, answer some basic questions, and that was it. For the US, it was the exact same thing. If you go to any hospital, any clinic, any pharmacies, right? CVS, Walgreens, even like supermarkets like Big C, Lotus comparison, okay? They even provided COVID-19 vaccines. And that was where we got it from. We got our COVID vaccine from CVS inside a Target. So imagine ว่าเป็นเหมือนแบบ booths เหมือนเข้าไปในห้างแล้วก็มี booths หรือว่ามีวัตสันมีอะไรแบบนี้ and everybody was giving you COVID vaccine. Regardless ว่าอยู่เป็นใครอะไรยังไงก็ตาม. At the same time, there were also booths. There were also pop-up booths. So when we got there around the beginning of July. And July 4th, the Independence Day, is one of America's biggest national holiday. So when we went there, we went to the Rose Bowl, and there was that booth right there. It was just right there, out in the middle. COVID vaccine, no cost. You go inside, you give them your basic information, your phone number, your email. They don't ask for any government ID, and you could just get the vaccine right there. It was everywhere. Universal City, if you've been to the US, you've been to Universal, I hope. It's a great place. Disneyland, all of these booths were everywhere. It was very accessible. Think of it as 7-Eleven. มันอยู่ที่ไทยแล้วเข้าเซเว่นขับไปที่ไหนอยู่ก็มีเซเว่นขับไปที่ไหนก็มีแก๊สมีปั๊มน้ำมัน It was exactly like that. They made it very simple. So this was kind of the environment at Independence Day, and I'm gonna kind of นอกเรื่องนิดนึง I thought it was kind of cute. They had this เป็นนักอวกาศเป็นนัก NASA เข้ามาพูด because there were little kids. There were a lot of little kids, so they had NASA มาพูดแล้วก็ kind of encourage kids to get into science, to get into engineering, to get into space, to kind of pique their interest since they were young. So I thought it was kind of cute. Now keep in mind, this was back in July. As you can look around, it was outdoors, sure, but not a lot of people were wearing masks at the time. During July, when I left Thailand, our cases were just starting to spike. We were just starting to shut down while other countries were already opening up. And if you look, everything was completely normal. It was pretty amazing to see. So in regards to COVID-19 services that they had in the US, who was eligible, who could get these services? And I'm going to read this part for you really quickly, okay? The first part says in the box in red, everyone is eligible for COVID-19 services, no matter their immigration status. Testing, treatment, or vaccination is paid for by the federal government, will not affect anyone's immigration status or be shared with immigration agencies. That means that if you were in the US illegally, let's say you crossed the border, right? Trump wouldn't be happy, but let's say you crossed the border without applying, and you're there illegally, you could go in and say, hey, I'm not supposed to be here, but I don't want to die. I want to get a vaccine. And they will promise not to tell on you, and you're going to be safe. Because they understood priorities. They understood it was more important to get herd immunity, to get people to be vaccinated, or to remove people who might be infected, to get them tested, remove them from the population, so the economy recovers faster, so they don't infect other people who might be more vulnerable, like the older people or people with pre-existing conditions. So they had their priorities straight. Who can get the services? Anyone without health insurance, no matter immigration status, social security number, government ID, or anything is not required. That means that if you're there illegally or if you don't have money, you could still get all of these services for free. It's actually in the Constitution in the US. It's actually in the Constitution that if it's a pandemic, the government has to take care of it, because it's something that can no longer be controlled, that is outside of their control. It's something that affects everybody. And the last thing is what is free. Again, everything is free. Testing for COVID is free. Treatment is free. Vaccine for COVID-19 is also free. You can even choose if you want Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson. Those are kind of the main three that they have over there in the US. And keep going. They will even make sure that you don't get scammed, especially if you're a tourist. So it says here, you cannot be billed for COVID-19 vaccinations. If you receive a bill, you should first speak to the person or the faculty that sent it. If they don't cancel it, contact so-and-so, because it's all supposed to be free. And they realized that some people were trying to scam, some people were trying to make money, lying to people, and they were making sure that wasn't happening. So they were even taking care of you in that regards. And again, you cannot be billed for COVID-19 services if you are uninsured, and the government is paying for your healthcare provider. If you receive a bill and you already paid, you may be owed a refund. That's how much they're going for their people and for tourists. Because in this case, we went there and we got the vaccine for free as well, right? And just a funny story, because we didn't know at first that if something was to happen, for example, if you were to have a side effect, the chances were very slim for you to actually have any side effect. แต่ถ้าเกิดว่าโอเคถูกหวยยูเสือกซวยแล้วก็มี side effect ขึ้นมา the government will pay for all of it. So while we were there, we had some of our friends with us.แล้วก็มีป้า Diana. She's an amazing lady. She was there. She had a mini stroke, unfortunately. We were walking in Costco. We were shopping, and then all of a sudden she stopped moving. We looked back. We were like, Diana, where'd you go? She just kind of stood there. She didn't walk. She stopped walking. She couldn't walk. So she sat down, and she thought it might be genetics, but she had a mini stroke. She realized that something was wrong. So we got in the car. We rushed her to the hospital, and we went to see the doctor. Okay, we went to see the doctor. And sometime during the talk, we mentioned that she just had her shot. She just had her Pfizer or Moderna shot. I don't remember. I think it might have been Moderna. She had a vaccination shot just a couple of days ago, or like last week or something like that. And the doctor said that, okay, in that case, it might not be related. It probably isn't. But in that case, no matter how much the bill came down to, it was all going to be paid for by the government. We didn't know this at the time. We were sitting in there. We were like, oh crap, really? Holy. So yeah, we left the hospital. The bill wasn't, we didn't know how much it was. We asked the nurse, we kind of asked people who were in the business to kind of find out how much it was going to be. It was going to be somewhere between 10,000 to 20,000. So ตีเป็นเงินไทยก็อาจจะประมาณ 500,000-600,000 บาท. Completely paid for by the government. And we were tourists, by the way. We were not paying their taxes. Just because it was a slim chance that the vaccine might have caused a stroke. And to push it even further, later on, she kind of needed some more medicine. She didn't even have to go back to the hospital. She just went to a nearby CVS. The same doctor was able to prescribe telemed, was able to prescribe the drugs that was needed. And the CVS kind of gave her the drugs. And again, everything was free of charge, just because it was tied to that one mentioning of the vaccine. So that's the kind of system that they got. When we got inside CVS, we were inside Target, like I told you before. We just walked inside. We didn't have any appointment, zero. We went to the registration, check-in. It took less than 5 minutes for each person. We gave them our name, our contact information, our email, our phone number. We answered some basic questions like, okay, have you been in contact with someone with COVID in the past 14 days? No. Do you have any symptoms? Do you have fever? Are you coughing? Are you blah, blah, blah? And you just answer everything, no, no, no. And that's it. And then the shot itself was very quick. We had Pfizer at the time. So in this case, you were able to choose what kind of vaccine you wanted. The location that we went to only had Pfizer, which was fine. We wanted Pfizer anyway. But let's say if you had wanted Johnson & Johnson, you would have just maybe walked down the street, go to another CVS that might have Johnson & Johnson. It was that simple. And one thing that I noticed, the shot didn't hurt at all. And it was very quick. When I see videos of people getting jabbed in Thailand or getting jabbed kind of all over, not just in Thailand, in other countries as well, you know, you see these long needles, right? That kind of goes in deep into your arm, and then they have to hold it and adjust it, pull the thing, you know, it looked incredibly painful. For this, it was just like that. It was an end bite. ไม่เจ็บเลย แล้วก็ we had no side effect. The second shot, I had a little bit of a side effect. The second shot, I was weak for a little bit. I felt weak for a couple of days, but apart from that, it was just แขนตึง sore arm, ยกแขนไม่ขึ้นแป๊บนึง แล้วก็ that's it. Everything was normal. And not only that, once we got the vaccine, we were even given free money. They gave us free money to shop inside Target. We each got $5, all right? So 2 shots each. That comes down to $30 or about ได้ตังค์มา 1,000 เอามาช้อปปิ้งเล่น from yeah, that was nice. And then they even had more programs. So we even got emails later on that we were also eligible, that California had a program going on that we were eligible for. Each of us was going to get $50 more just for getting the COVID vaccine. So in total, 50, it's $180. 5,600 baht. Yeah, let's see. And yeah, this is just to show you, this was my mom when she got the shot, right? So when I told you it was really quick, I wasn't kidding. It was like too quick. I don't think girls would be happy, but yeah, look at this. That's it. So I don't know when I see videos of people getting jabbed and it looks so painful. I'm just like, where are we giving different vaccines here? I don't know. Are they having too much fun? I don't know. Anyway, so once you got the vaccine, this was the card that you would get. Very, very basic card, very simple card. To be honest, I could print that out and write it myself, right? Super simple. This was after the second shot. It says, all right, it's got your name on it, it's got your date of birth. When the pharmacist wrote my name, she actually even wrote my name wrong, and she just kind of like fixed it with white out, and she just kind of fixed it right there. It's a little surprising that it's that simple. But then it doesn't matter, because even if you lose this card, our name, our records were already in the system. And should we wanted to go anywhere, this was the record. Anywhere you go. So for example, when I was over there, if I wanted to go to nightclubs, if I wanted to go to some certain restaurants that was a little bit more crowded, they might ask for us to show that we at least have been vaccinated. And if you didn't have the card, you can just go online, type in the information, and then there's that digital COVID-19 vaccine record that you could just show to people. Now, just as an interesting topic, just something to bring up. This is something that is currently being debated in the US. A lot of people are saying that the fact of having vaccine passport or having to show that you've been vaccinated in order for you to access certain locations or certain places is giving government too much control. So one side is arguing for it, the other side is arguing against it. It's a contentious topic. If you're interested in American politics, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's a pretty heated debate going on right now. So that's it. So we got 2 shots. We got the first one. We waited for I believe 3 weeks, and then we got our second one. It was very simple. We went back to the same place. The second time we made an online reservation at least, and that's it. Very simple. So now some people might say, but aren't we taking advantage of their system? Because I hear there's a lot, right? A lot of people might say, but hey, it's their money, it's their vaccine. Are we going there to take advantage of them by taking their vaccine? And in this case, you know, claiming 600 baht worth of medical bills without having to pay. And I would argue no. I would argue that if anything, we stimulated their economy a lot more than they were actually hoping for, right? Because we were there for some time. We spent, of course, just paying on gas alone, right? Driving the cars around, getting on gas, buying food, buying things back. We traveled around. We went to Las Vegas. We did a lot of things, and just that alone was stimulating their economy so much so that the cost of production for a vaccine just didn't matter. In fact, in case you guys didn't know, the cost of producing one shot of Pfizer, one dose of Pfizer, could be as little as $1.20. 50 บาท That's the cost. 50 บาท อเมริกันบอกว่า come in มาเลย กูให้หมดเลย come in, right? So no, it's a win-win. I would say it's a win-win. For us, we get the vaccine, and then for them, they get to boost their economy by a little bit. So it's vaccine tourism. But like Kieran said, I also don't think it's going to be around for a long time. As more and more countries have access to vaccines, as more and more countries have a better breakthrough rate, have herd immunity, I think vaccine tourism as a concept will slowly go away. And it's just going to go into more of an endemic kind of thing where we're just going to have to live with it. We're just going to have to find a way to live with it. Like, it would be like the flu shot. Every year, you kind of have to get a new shot, right? Every year. And they're predicting it. For example, right now, the CDC is probably thinking, all right, in a couple of months from now, winter is approaching, right? And they're probably even thinking of the one for the next year already. They're thinking, okay, what is the next flu shot going to be? In the future, they're also going to think, all right, what's the next COVID shot going to be? And it's going to be an endemic. So we just have to find a way to live with it at this point. We can't be shutting down economies anymore. And then the US realizes this. And just something to because I find it very fascinating. I find it very, very fascinating. So if you are any car enthusiast, right? Some guys here, I'm guessing if you guys are into cars at all, you know that cars here in Thailand are a little bit more expensive than other countries, right? Because of taxes and whatnot. But just to put it in perspective, when we went there, we were staying for some time. So we decided, you know what, we're going to buy a car. We wanted to buy one car. But when we got inside, there was even a premium on the car because there was a shortage in supply. So they even added an X amount of money to the car. And even then we were like, we converted the amount of money it cost into Thai baht. And the A5, the Audi A5 is the smaller car, is a cheaper car. The Q7 on the right is a more expensive car. It's fully loaded, max option, max everything. We couldn't even find it in the state. They had to ship it from another state. But if you convert it into Thai baht, it was like we bought the A5 and then we got the Q7 with maximum option, not for free. If you were to buy it in Thailand. So I just thought it was fascinating, like the difference is massive. And when we told people over there that the price in Thailand was like this, nobody believed us. All right. So that was the first part. Very simple. Going over there, getting vaccinated, seeing how things are, everything makes sense. Now, coming home, a little bit more difficult, like Kieran said, right? I think one of or a couple of the students here asked Kieran if the Phuket was considered successful, maybe yes, maybe no. And Kieran said the concept was good. It at least brought some economy back, but they just made it a little bit too hard for tourists to want to come, right? The process was taking a little bit too much. And I'm just here to talk a little bit about that because I think going forward, especially people who work in the tourism industry, we kind of have to realize the importance of it, right? So why am I telling you all this? Thai tourism is very important. It's very important. It's a lot more important than people think, right? Almost 1/5 of our GDP actually comes from tourism. 1/5. It's usually around like 18% or so. Sometimes it goes a little bit higher. It kind of hovers around there, which translates to about 3 trillion baht, 3 ล้านล้าน per year. And so the past 2 years, we kind of missed that out. Okay, 1 year was purely because of COVID, right? And then another year, at least, okay, Phuket Sandbox, maybe in December, Kieran said, 40-50% of his hotel was coming up. So maybe it's going to be a little bit better. But in general, we've been hit very hard by COVID. The economy was already kind of suffering before, but with COVID, now it's even worse. But I just want to say, this leads to a lower consumption in general, because like I said, if there's no money coming in, let's say hotels are not getting paid. Hotels are not getting paid. People who work in hotels industry, they don't have money to spend on other businesses as well. The economy kind of contracts in general. and it affects everybody. So tourism is very important in Thailand. That's why I'm talking about this. And unfortunately, Thailand as a country, we actually don't have any other invention, or we don't have any real selling point anymore. Tourism is kind of the thing that we have to go for at this point. We don't have any machines or any licenses that we could license to other countries to try and scale the country. So we have to really consider tourism and really make it work. Otherwise, this part of the GDP will be gone, and we don't know what could happen. Right? The Thai baht is already kind of depreciating pretty hard if you're following that as well. So we have to make tourism work. We have to make it world class. And the last thing is, before I move forward, is I don't think tourists are supposed to be scary. I think we have this conception that we shouldn't let tourists come in, because if they come in, they're going to spread COVID. Because if they come in, we're all going to get sick, like Kieran said. Because the very first person, we got COVID from a tourist, just as around the world, right? Every country did. But at this point, I mean, we've seen the numbers. 10,000, 20,000 a day before this and that. I mean, at this point, we shouldn't be scared of tourism anymore. We should be welcoming them in. We should be making it as frictionless as possible, so that they, like we did, like we brought money to the US, they bring money into us, right? So tourism are not scary. If anyway, they actually have to be scared of us, because they actually probably have the better vaccines. And when they're coming in, they have been vaccinated. They have been fully vaccinated, right? And not even that, the what's the word for it? They've been fully vaccinated, and the rate of people coming in that are infected is somewhere between 0.03% and 0.05%. And like Kieran said, again, that number is not even clear, because they might have gotten infected while they were in Thailand, and not actually because they were infected prior to coming. Because remember, in order for them to come, they've been fully vaccinated, and they must have been tested before they got on the plane. All right. So our preparation before we came back from the US, coming back to Thailand, what do we have to do? We flew on 2 different flights. I used Singapore Airlines, and my parents used Emirates. So we had different requirements. I needed to be tested 48 hours. My parents needed to be tested 72 hours prior before flying. But the tests there were completely free, as I already told you guys. It was completely free. Results were available very quickly. Within 12 hours, we already got the results back. And for myself, when I went to get tested, nobody stuck nothing up my nose. It didn't happen over there. มันเป็น throat swab เขาแค่เสียบเข้ามาในคอหมุนนิดนึง there was no pain. There was no pain. ไม่ได้ร้องไห้เสียบเข้าไปแล้วไม่ได้ร้องไห้เหมือนตอนที่ทำที่ไทยเขาตรวจที่คอ That's it. แล้ว when my parents got the test, they let us do it ourselves. They gave us the thing, and then we just had to stick it up our nose, not too deep, and kind of play around with it for about 15 seconds. They were watching the clock. They were counting 15 seconds to make sure that at least the stick was in our nose somewhere for 15 seconds. But we didn't have to stick it all the way up to our brain. No, it wasn't the case. So again, there was no discomfort. I think it's because they don't want the liability. Because what happens if one person decides to stick it a little bit too deep and it ends up hurting the other person? They don't want to be responsible. They don't want to be liable, right? So they're letting us do it ourselves. But hey, the results still work. And there's no pain on the other side as well. There's less liability on one side. There's no pain on the person getting swabbed. It's a win-win. I don't know why we're not doing it here, but apparently we're not. It was also minimal staffing. Mine was a drive-through. My parents wasn't a drive-through. They went inside, but there were 2 staffs per station. One person was handling the documents and the paperwork and the registration. The other person was handling was holding the swab. Just it required 2 people, and they were processing people like very quickly. They were very, very efficient. All right. So the certificate of entry, the COE, or I was kind of joking with my friend. We were calling it the CO Evo. It required a lot of different. It required 6 components in order for you to get a COE. Now they're changing it right now, so it's getting a little bit better. But my experience coming in was like this. We needed to have a passport or a visa, right? A vaccine certificate to show that we were vaccinated. We had to have the flight itinerary, right, to show that we have the plane tickets coming in. We had to have Shaba hotels confirmation, right? So different hotels work with the government. And once we pay them, once we book the hotels, they'll send a confirmation to the government. And we also have to attach this little piece of paper, this Shaba piece of paper together in order to get the COE. We also had to register for the swab tests. in the sandbox. We needed 3 of those. No, it was 3 in the beginning, but then by the time we got in, it was reduced down to 2, luckily. And then for everybody, we needed insurance as well. That covers up to $100,000. So the experience was not as smooth as when I went to the US. The experience was not as smooth. So it was very long. The process itself took very long, and it was quite unreliable, and it was a little bit unintuitive in a sense that, for example, the website would crash quite a bit, and it would time out. Sometimes uploading, the upload button didn't work. And the one thing that kind of pissed myself and Diana, along with my other friend who came back before me, was there was a save button. I'm being nitpicky. I'm just sharing experience at this point, but there was a save button at the bottom. And if you have ever filled out any government form, usually a save button, what it does is it saves what you have put down, right? So let's say there's 100 boxes you got to fill out. Maybe you filled out 50 of them and you click save. It saves the 50 so that you can come back and fill out the other 50. But in this case, the save button actually meant submit. And the second you submitted, you couldn't make any changes. You couldn't make any more edits. You had to wait for the embassy to reject or to approve. They were going to reject the COE back and tell you what's wrong, and then you have to do it all over again. And that could take 3-4 days depending on how fast they work, right? And yeah, so the process was a little bit tedious. And if you ask anybody who had done the COE process, they'll tell you the exact same thing. So I'm really glad that they're removing that, or they're going on to Thailand Pass, or at least they're making it easier, right? I'm hoping that they completely remove it. Like Kieran said, in Ireland, when they travel to other countries, it's nothing was required. And that pushes people to want to travel there. The more roadblocks, the more obstacles you put ahead of them, the less likely they are going to come to you, right? And then, of course, the RT-PCR test, right? Not antigen test. It has to be PCR. The thing that they stick it into your nose. And you also got to pay it yourself. Up to $300. ถ้าตีเป็นเงินไทยก็ประมาณ 8,000-9,000 บาท. That's what we had to pay per person. The next one, like I said, the Shaba, the hotel, right? We had to do that. Confirmation alone from the hotel wasn't enough, by the way. You also had to upload proof of payment. So like if you transferred money to the bank. So what we did in the beginning was we submitted the confirmation, right? We told them what the code was. We said that, hey, okay, we got the Shaba from this hotel and this hotel. They rejected our application actually and said that, oh, they also required the proof of payment. I'm just thinking to myself, but if I have the confirmation, doesn't that mean that I already paid? But okay, so I also submitted that as well. And if there was any problem at all, there was no help. You can email them and they'll take a couple of days to answer. But other than that, I was trying to call the embassy, the consulate in LA. I was trying to call the ones here in Thailand to at least get some help with the form, because they even put a time limit that after you have been approved, you have to upload certain documents within 15 days. So it made it very not flexible. And so if you travel, plans change all the time. And every time something changes, you have to go back and get a new Shaba. You have to re-register for the swab tests all over again. You have to change a flight. You have to do this and that. And then you have to do the whole COE process all over again, just if you have any changes whatsoever. And that made it very difficult, because when I told you that Diana had a mini stroke, we had to change our flight. We had to change our flight because she was not fit to fly. So we had to push it out by about a week. And it was really difficult to have to contact each and every hotel, have to contact the swab test and getting them to change our registration. It was kind of a mess. Calls were never answered. The voicemail was full. The next one, plane tickets. Again, the flight confirmation with your name, with your passport number, with everything on it, not enough. They needed a proof of payment. So again, our thing was rejected because they asked us to also submit the proof of payment. And RT-PCR test, when we submitted the confirmation, we submitted the proof of payment to show that there was receipts. It wasn't enough. They rejected us again. They rejected us saying that they needed the specific dates of each of the time that we were actually going to be tested. Shouldn't that already be in the system? I don't know, but anyway, it's kind of that's why Kieran said that it made it so difficult for people to actually want to come in. That's why if this had been maybe better handled, We might have gotten more tourists. I don't know, but in the future, I'm hoping well, at least it's going in the correct direction with the Thailand pass. It's a big improvement for sure. And then the last thing is the insurance that I talked about. It must be from AXA only. So a lot of the tourists, they already had their insurance, and their insurance is global, right? Most of the time, Europeans, for example, or Americans have insurance, it's global. But no, we don't accept it. Thailand doesn't accept it. If you want to come here, you have to buy insurance from a specific company, costs about 4,000, 5,000 baht. Now, again, the question is, but when you're in an insurance business, your business model requires you to buy risk, right? You are essentially purchasing risk, and you're hoping that nothing happens. But if something happens, you have to pay a larger sum of money. That's a business model of a insurance company. But in this case, people coming in were already vaccinated. They were already tested before they were going to fly. So let's say in the 0.03% chance that they do have COVID, the chances of them actually being admitted to a hospital is very low because they have been vaccinated. So if anything, they might just be coughing for a day and then everything will be fine. So essentially they were making it was risk-free. And the last thing that was the most annoying and kind of the most hilarious was everything needed to be printed out. All of the papers that I mentioned, every single piece of paper needed to be printed out. I guess we just have too many trees and we don't know what to do with it, you know? So like, let me show you. This was kind of the process. I didn't screenshot a whole lot, and I'm not gonna make you watch all of it, just, you know, but there were a lot of boxes to fill out. There were a lot of things you have to do all of this. You have to fill out, right? When did you get vaccinated? Show proof. This is all understandable, all right? This is understandable because they have this program. Sure, if you want to do it, let's do it. And afterwards, you're going to get a code. So every time you want to log in, every time you want to edit something, you have to remember this code, put this code in, put your passport, put this and that. It was a little annoying. And like I said, there was a 15-day limit of after you've been approved. If your flight changes or if anything at all, and you go outside of that, you have to start everything all over from the beginning. So like it was painful. It was painful. Like in this case, we ran out of time. We had to do everything all over again. These were the papers. These were the documents. Now keep in mind, these were the documents that I had to print out in order for me to fly. All right. There's more, but these are kind of the main ones. But these are documents that have already been done. You know what that means? That means that you already contacted this and that, and in order to get it all done. But in order for you to get each of these individual documents, the amount of work you actually got to do, the amount of emails, the amount of calls, the amount of transfers and uploads you have to make is pretty crazy. Like for example, like all of these that I'm showing you right now. And that even lead to agencies realizing that, you know what, a lot of people don't know how to do it. And they were offering services, right? Hey, if you want to come into Thailand, we're going to offer you a service. We're going to do the COE process for you, because so many people were just giving up. And then these are just some comments that I found. Some of these were actually from Kieran's podcast. So in case you guys didn't hear, he has a podcast on YouTube as well as other places where you consume your podcast. It's called Thai Expat Daily Show. Check him out. He gives a very, very good insight on the tourism industry, on how other countries are viewing our tourism industry when they're coming in. If you're working in the tourism industry, just kind of checking out his channel will give you an idea of where the trend's going and when the customers are coming in. So I mean, all of this, I'm just going to summarize. All of this are saying the same thing that I'm saying, that the COE needs to go away, right? That the PCR test needs to go away, the insurance and everything. The second those things are gone, tourists will start coming back in. It seems like everybody is on board with that, and I'm hoping that it will go that way, right? That this guy summarizes my exact feeling, right? The COE is a pain to do. Types it right there. So when we arrived in Thailand, the experience was this. You will be greeted with a lot of chairs. A lot of chairs. And you can take your pick. You can go and sit on any of the chairs. And then the first person will come to you. They're gonna wear blue. All right. They're gonna check your documents first. So if you can see, there's gonna be, like, for example, the person on the right, right? Someone's who is wearing blue will come up to you and check your documents, okay? After they check your documents, someone in white will come to you. Now, this person in white will check for the app. So you have to download Mochana app so they can track you, right? I heard a lot of complaints when I was there. I heard a lot of groan, a lot of moans from people over there that they have to download this app nowadays. Everything's an app. They track you. They this and that. But okay, it was a requirement, so we all did it. So the person in blue will come and check the documents, and then the person in white will come and check the app. And then, so like this, for example, as you can see here, right? They'll come and check your app, make sure that you have it turned on. And then you go on to the health counter, and then they're going to check your documents again. So they check your documents again. And if you don't have any of the documents, for example, you don't have all of it printed out, they're going to make you print it out. The wife of an ambassador, I'm not going to say ambassador of what country, but we met each other. We know each other. His wife didn't know how to do the COE. So his wife asked his daughter, so the wife asked her daughter to do it for her. And the wife didn't print out the Shaba paper. So because of time difference, the wife wasn't able to contact the daughter and get the Shaba confirmation from the daughter's email. So she had to contact the hotel, waited about an hour and a half for things to be sorted out. And then eventually they sent an email. She had to run to find a place to print. After she printed, she handed the paper to the lady, and then they gave the paper back anyway. So we weren't sure why everything had to be printed out, for example. But okay, we went to this counter. They checked the documents again, and then after that, the records and everything's in the system. So it looks like they have it all managed. And then afterwards, we would go past some police checkpoints, and then they would check the papers again, and then we go through immigration, and then they check the papers again, and then we did the finger scans, and then we were finally let through, right? And the board on the left, which is I took a picture of it, I just thought it was interesting. It's the flights that were coming in, because like Kieran said that, because sometimes airlines need to know in advance for them to plan flights. They need to know months in advance for them to plan flights. Otherwise, they can't just, okay, next month Thailand's going to open. All right, we're going to have X and X and X flights, X and X and X planes going over there. They have to plan in advance. And so because we constantly change, it's very hard for airlines. So a lot of airlines end up actually canceling the flights, which means that the existing flights are more expensive because there's less supply. So the existing flights are more expensive. And because of the COE process requiring you to do it within a certain day, within a certain time frame, it means that they have to wait, let's say, for example, 14 days before the actual departure. And most of the time, if you travel, the closer you are to the actual date of departure, if you haven't booked your flight before, it's probably going to be more expensive. So everything just adds up to being more expensive. We then went through the COVID test. And my Lord, in the US, when I told you that they just did an oral swab, it didn't hurt, it was simple, or we were able to do it ourselves. We didn't have to stick it up the nose. When we landed at the Phuket airport, they demanded that you do nostrils, and not only one, they wanted to do it in both nostrils. So that was fun. And then finally, when after that, you are forced to be inside the cab. You cannot exit the cab. They will take you straight to the hotel because your result hasn't come out yet. They don't know if you actually have COVID or maybe you got COVID on the plane. They make you wait in the hotel room for a day, which is okay because afterwards, the next 6 or 14 or 13 days, depending on when you go, you can roam the island and at least enjoy the island, which is amazing. And again, depending on when you went, either once or twice more, you have to get tested. You have to get tested inside the sandbox itself. Again, so we got that as well. The funny thing was they actually changed the location of the testing site, but it wasn't updated anywhere. So we were kind of driving around, circling, trying to find the place. And eventually we had to ask a local person to bring us, with a motorcycle, to kind of lead us to the new place. And so, going forward, we were hoping that we have to make tourism a lot more attractive. So if you compare my experience when I went to the US and how easy it was and how frictionless it was, right, compared to if you were a tourist coming into Thailand, we have to make that at least somewhat be on the same level. Because if we realize that tourism is kind of the only thing that we have to offer the world, then we should make sure that our tourism industry is top notch. We have to make it world class, right? And that means that maybe we have to add more bathrooms, right? Maybe we have to add, we have better transportation or have better infrastructure around, right? Remove barriers like the mandatory swab test and the COE, or in the future Thailand Pass. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but they're moving in the right direction. I'm happy about that. And again, the inefficiencies. When I was in the US, each COVID testing site only had 2 people. Here, why so many? When we came to Phuket, like I said, right, the documents were checked about 6-7 times. We had to print everything out. If I were to show you all of the documents we had to print out just to make sure, because we wanted to make sure that everything was going to be fine. Everybody there had to print out. Everybody there had a stack of documents to stick, just so they could get them. And lastly, like Kieran mentioned before as well, it's going to be an endemic. We're going to have to find a way to live with it, right? We have to trust that the vaccines work. We have to trust, no matter what you have, it doesn't matter, right? Sinovac, Astra, Pfizer. We have to trust that, hey, okay, once enough people have been vaccinated, once we have herd immunity, we have to live with it. Some people will get sick. It's inevitable, right? Some people will get sick, but you won't die. Even if you get sick, if anything, it's like having a flu. You might be sick for a couple of days and then everything will be fine and then life goes on, right? We have to take precautions, wash our hands, social distance, do all that still. Mask, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be wearing masks for the rest of my life. For the next couple of years, okay, maybe I'll hold to it. I don't know about for the rest of our lives. But yeah, we as long as we're all doing our part, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. It'll be an endemic, but I think it'll be okay. And so that's kind of my experience in both places, right? Going to the US and then coming back in. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much ค่ะคุณโอโหแบบ it's really difficult to return back home I have to say
นิดหน่อยครับนิดหน่อยก็เป็น experience ถือว่าเป็น experience
Okay we got a question from Tanmatit
I would like to ask you if in the next couple of days we're gonna open up the country. What do you think is the key to success in opening up the countries?
Key to success, first of all, is that they have to decide earlier. So in case you guys didn't know, maybe like, what's the date today? Hold on. 28th. So just last week, right? The new program was going to open up and the website wasn't even running yet. The actual website that people go on and get information about what was required wasn't even up yet. And it was 10 days away from opening. And like I said, airlines need to plan before. People have to plan before. If you are traveling, you usually plan a month in advance, 2 months in advance, right? And if we're talking 10 days, that's not even counting the time it would take for you to register for the swab test or for the Shaba or COE and this and that. Not counting any of that, you're giving them less than 10 days. So like the first key to success is decide earlier and let it be known months in advance so people can plan. So airlines can plan flights. Because otherwise, if there's no flight, again, it leads to the same loop, right? No flights are more expensive. Flights are more expensive, people don't come. Same thing. So plan earlier. Second thing is think of it as a business. When you're think of it as a business. When you're running a business, let's say you have a restaurant, or let's say you have a spa, or you have anything at all. You want to make it as frictionless as possible for people to come, right? The more steps you got to do, the less likely they are to come. That's why, for example, if you have a place near BTS, what happens? People take one BTS ride, they come to your place, it's easy. If you have to say, all right, come to BTS and then นั่งต่อมอไซค์เข้ามา and then walk another 200 meters. Imagine something like that, except on a grander scale. So reduce all of these obstacles. Make it easier for people to come. That's another key. And then the last, actually there's more, but I'll keep it short. The last thing I think is in general, you have to just, this is more long term. This is more like a long term view. Is I think we have to make the country a little bit more attractive in terms of tourism. Like for example, like when I said having more bathroom, I wasn't kidding. If you've been to Japan, right? Everywhere you go, you know that there's clean bathrooms. If you come here, let's say you drive ขับขึ้นไปเชียงใหม่หรือว่าอยู่ไปทำนู่นทำนั่นอะไรขึ้นดอยคือมัน sometimes having proper access to bathroom is not even there yet, and we want to make it the world-class country, a world-class tourism destination, right? They kind of have to go together, I would say. So that's more on the long-term thing. But in the short term, decide earlier, whatever you want to do, whatever it is, even if you're going to put some obstacle in the way, decide earlier. People have to decide, man. They can't just wait for you 10 days before and your website isn't even up yet. And then like I said, make it as frictionless as possible. That's what I would say. From what I have been through, that's my experience.
Thank you.
Okay, so we take a question from Irada, please.
Okay, so as I would like you to give some advice to that entrepreneur who going to open their business again in the next few days. Like you said in the earlier of the sessions that be opening the shop again may take a really higher cost than you expected after the COVID pandemic, right? Can you give like one advice for them in case like ถ้าสมมติว่ามันแบบเปิดประเทศแบบว่า3 วันแล้วมันต้องปิดทันทีเลยอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะ
โอ้โหเขาเปิด3 วันปิดทันทีก็คงจะชิบหายกันหมดเนาะต้องถามก่อนว่าเป็น business ประมาณไหนครับ
Can it be like hotel, tourism industry, any like restaurant?
Okay, like restaurant, right? So for example, I have a restaurant, so I can speak a little bit about that, right? For restaurant, your question, if I understand this right, your question was one tip ให้กับ business ที่อยู่ใน tourism industry ว่าทำยังไงถึงจะ thrive เพราะว่ามันมี cost ในการเปิดใช่ไหมครับพอเปิดขึ้นมาเสร็จปั๊บเนี่ยใช่ไหม do your research. When I said do my research, for example, watching ที่บอกไปว่า watching Kieran show for example ใช่ไหมครับการที่เข้าไปดูแค่นั้นแล้วลองไปดูในคอมเมนต์หรือลองดูว่าคนเขาคิดอะไรกันยังไงแค่นี้อยู่ก็ดูเทรนด์ออกแล้วว่าคนเขาคิดยังไงคนมาน้อยหรือมามากเช่น if you were in Phuket ใช่ไหมครับถ้าอยู่เป็นโรงแรมที่อยู่ในภูเก็ตตอนนี้ or before ตอนที่ภูเก็ต Sandbox เปิดเนี่ยคนมันก็มีบางเจ้านะครับที่เขาตัดสินใจไม่เปิดเช่น Novotel ไม่เปิดครอบครัวผมรู้จักกับเจ้าของ at least บางคนนะเนาะเป็นผู้บริหารข้างบนเขาดีไซน์ว่าเขาไม่เปิดเพราะว่าเขาคิดว่าเปิดไปก็คงคนไม่พอเปิดไปกลายเป็นคอสสูงกว่าก็คือเขาทำ research แล้วเขาลอง forecast ออกมาว่าดูเทรนด์แล้วมันไม่น่าจะเป็นไปได้ถ้ามันดูแล้วเป็นไปไม่ได้เขาก็ไม่เปิดเขาไม่เสี่ยงใช่ไหมครับถ้าตอนผมไปภูเก็ตมาเนี่ย a lot of restaurants are still closed. McDonald's was closed. KFC, Starbucks อะไรพวกนี้ก็ยังปิดอยู่ so a lot of people also didn't open up for businesses in Bangkok like Kieran said if you heavily rely on tourism it's time to shift. It's time to also focus on the local market. My restaurant, Brunello, is an Italian restaurant. It's on Rama 9. So Rama 9 it's not necessarily right in the center of town. However, it's on the way to the airport, right? It's on the way to the airport to Suvarnabhumi. So a lot of our customers were actually tourists. So the second COVID hit, we lost a good chunk of our customers. So we shifted from dine-in, we shifted to selling wine, we shifted to doing catering instead. อะไรอย่างเงี้ยครับมันก็คืออยู่ก็ต้อง pivot. The business world is always changing. If you don't pivot, you're going to be left behind.
Thank you.
Panchita, we got a question from Panchita.
Yes, I want to ask since you have been to vaccine tourism in US, so do you think what is your opinion when there are some people that think that vaccine tourism is going to increase the inequality in the society between people who can afford and people who cannot afford? Do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I have my opinion on it, but then we can't do anything about it. Like if you think about it, if countries that have it's always going to be the country that have the technological advancement who are going to come up with all of these new inventions, with all of these vaccines, with all of these whatever, right? So because of that, now you could say that, okay, but they're the rich countries. They have the money, they have the infrastructure. Why are we still going over there to give it to them? But at the same time, they were the one who spent money and who risked, right? Pfizer, BioNTech, Johnson & Johnson, Janssen, whatever, they didn't miraculously เสกวัคซีนนี้เข้ามาเขาก็ต้องมีการ invest มันคือธุรกิจเขาก็ต้องมีการ invest เขาก็ต้องมีการลงทุนเขาก็มีความเสี่ยง when they invested they were not sure that they were going to find the actual cure right they took a risk in fact a lot of places invested and didn't find the vaccine didn't do it correctly didn't do it successfully right so now you could this is a philosophical debate now of capitalism versus of profit, right? Because you could say that, hey, they invested, they took the risk. Now they should be able to claim the reward. They should be able to reap the reward because they took the risk, right? So the question is a little bit hard to answer. Inequality is always going to be a problem, but in this case, there's nothing we can do about it, at least in this particular case, because the world has to be vaccinated. Because if the world doesn't get vaccinated, we don't move forward. We can't go anywhere. The world will not open up. So you could say, right, at this moment, it might increase inequality, but at the same time, it also allowed for a lot of people to get vaccinated faster. And so thereby they will achieve herd immunity faster, and that could in turn help out the actual original country in and of itself. You could also make a point for that, right? So it's a hard question for sure, and I see where you're coming from, but I think it goes a lot deeper than this particular instance. It's more of a capitalist versus this versus that kind of thing now.
Yes, thank you.
ทศวรรษ
ครับผมพูดภาษาไทยได้ใช่ไหมครับ
ได้ครับได้เลยไม่
พี่ครับคือผมอยากรู้ว่าหลังจากที่พี่เนี่ยมีประสบการณ์จริงๆจากการไปวัคซีนทัวริซึมที่อเมริกานะครับทีนี้พี่มองเห็นถึงโอกาสในการทำธุรกิจหรือว่าโอกาสที่เกี่ยวกับว่าการทำงานหลังจากสำหรับเด็กจบใหม่ที่พวกผมกำลังจะจบภายในปีนี้ครับพี่มองเห็นอะไรบ้างครับเพราะว่าคือคนทั่วไปที่ไปเที่ยวต่างประเทศครับช่วงปกติกับช่วงที่มันไม่ปกติอย่างมีโควิดระบาดเนี่ยครับว่าพี่เห็นอะไรครับ
หมายถึงว่าคิดว่างานสไตล์ไหนจะเปิดขึ้นมาเลยครับเพราะว่า opportunity สำหรับคนที่จบด้าน tourism มาจะไปทางไหนดีอย่างนี้ใช่ไหม
ครับใช่
เท่าที่ผมเห็นมานะ let's see I think a lot of people will be traveling now นะ the same ผมเห็นด้วยกับเคียรัน100%เลยตอนที่มีคนถามเขาแล้วเขาบอกว่าคนตอนนี้เพราะผมไปอยู่อเมริกามาอย่างเงี้ยผมบอกนะเลยว่าเพื่อนผมที่ขนาดผมเรียนจบกับเขามาด้วยกันนะตอนนี้นอนอยู่บ้านตีพุงไม่ไปทำงานเพราะว่ารัฐจ่ายเงินให้กลายเป็นตอนนี้เขามีเงินเต็มไปหมดเลยเก็บไว้ฉะนั้นเอาจริงๆตอนนี้ผมว่าคนที่ท่องเที่ยวเนี่ยหรือว่า at least รุ่นเราอะไรอย่างนี้เนี่ยเอาจริงเนี่ยเขามีเงินมากขึ้นแล้วเขาน่าจะอยากท่องเที่ยวมากขึ้นนะทีเนี้ยถ้าถามว่าโอเคเราอยู่ในประเทศไทยเราทำอะไรที่มันเกี่ยวกับทัวริซึมตอนนี้ได้ไหมผมว่าได้ผมว่าเริ่มแพลนตั้งแต่ตอนนี้รอให้มันไปถึงช่วง high season ปีหน้าตอนที่ทัวริสต์เขาเริ่มเข้ามาเนี่ยผมว่าถ้าเตรียมจับตลาดตรงนั้นเตรียมดักไว้ก่อนเนี่ยเตรียมตั้งแต่ตอนนี้เนี่ยเป็นอะไรที่น่าสนใจที่โอเคจะบอกว่าแต่จะทำอะไรเป็น specific จะเอาจุดขายอะไรอันนี้แล้วแต่ละอันนี้ก็ต้องไปหาดูว่าnicheคุณคืออะไรว่าคุณมี connection ทางด้านไหนว่าคุณจะทำธุรกิจแบบไหนแต่ว่าผมว่าเนี่ยธุรกิจทางด้านทัวริซึมเนี่ยมันกำลังจะโตไปอีกนะแล้วมันกำลังจะโตเพราะว่ามันมี pent up demand มันหายไปแล้วนิดนึงใช่เพราะว่าคนเขาเริ่มเที่ยวกันแล้วในระดับหนึ่งแต่ว่าอย่างที่เคียรันบอกว่าผมเห็นด้วยแล้วผมเห็นมาก็คือว่าคนเขามีเงินมากขึ้นแล้วโลกเราตอนนี้เนี่ยอย่าลืมว่าโลกเราตอนนี้กำลังเดินทางไปในทาง work from home มากกว่าคนไม่จำเป็นต้องเข้าไปในออฟฟิศแล้วผมมีเพื่อนผม2คนเขาคนนึงทำงานอยู่ Google อีกคนนึงอยู่ Facebook เขาคนนึงอยู่ตอนนี้อยู่ฮาวายอีกคนนึงเขาอยู่ไหนก็ไม่รู้แล้วตอนนี้เขาเห็นเขาบอกจะไปเวียดนามเลยไม่รู้คือเขาทำที่ไหนก็ได้คือตอนนี้ฉะนั้นทัวริซึมตอนนี้มันไม่ใช่แค่ทัวริซึมที่ว่าเฮ้ย I have 2 weeks vacation ว่ะ Can I go somewhere I'm gonna go to Thailand for 2 weeks no now it's something along the line of hey I have my job but I can work on my job whenever I want I can also work at night I have a friend ที่เขาทำงานให้ Stock Exchange ของฮ่องกงแต่ทุกวันนี้เขาอยู่ที่ซานฟรานซิสโกเขาต้องทำงานตอนกลางคืนแต่ว่าเขา prefer ที่อยู่ซานฟรานซิสโกแต่เขาทำงานในฮ่องกงนะผมมีเพื่อนอีกคนหนึ่งทำงาน Stock Exchange เหมือนกันเขาทำอยู่ Finance he lives in Irvine อยู่ที่ SoCal อยู่ที่ Southern California แต่เขาทำงานเวลานิวยอร์กแต่เขาอยู่ Irvine เพราะว่าเขามองว่า Irvine สวยกว่าเขาชอบอยู่ Irvine อันนี้ก็เป็นอีกด้านหนึ่งซึ่งผมมองว่าทัวริซึมตอนนี้โอเคมีทัวริซึมที่เป็นการท่องเที่ยวธรรมดาปกติซึ่งdemand ตรงนี้จะมากขึ้นเพราะคนมีเงินมากขึ้นแล้วเขาจะพร้อมออกมาเที่ยวปีหน้าอันนี้ก็ขึ้นอยู่กับรัฐบาลเราแล้วว่ารัฐบาลเราจะทำให้มันยากง่ายขนาดไหนอันนี้เราควบคุมไม่ได้ละอันนี้ก็แล้วแต่ข้างบนละใช่ไหมครับแต่ของเราเนี่ยเราก็ทำในส่วนที่เราทำได้ส่วนทัวริซึมอีกด้านหนึ่งก็คือไม่ใช่ทัวริซึมแค่เขามาแป๊บเดียวแต่เป็นทัวริซึมที่เขาแบบเฮ้ยคุณมาเลยคุณมาอยู่ไทย6 เดือนคุณ work from ที่ไหนก็ได้ในโลกใช่ป่ะคุณ work remote เนี่ยคุณทำงานในคอมเนี่ยคุณมาในไทยเลย6 เดือน3 เดือนคุณไปอยู่ใต้3 เดือนคุณไปอยู่เหนือเดี๋ยวผมจัดทริปให้อะไรแบบเนี้ยมันก็เป็นอีกด้านหนึ่งก็ลองคิดดูครับผม
ครับขอบคุณครับ
พี่ครับผมมีคำถาม
ครับผมไม่ต้องรีบพี่ก็ได้ครับผม
ก็คือว่าเอาแบบนี้ในความเห็นของพี่ละกันคิดว่าที่อีกไม่กี่วันเนี่ยก็จะเปิดประเทศแล้วเนี่ยวันที่1พี่ว่ามันจะไปได้รอดนานไหมในความคิดพี่นะ
ในความคิดผมตอนนี้นะผมว่าผมพูดตรงๆนะผมว่าจนถึงวันที่1ตอนนี้ต่อให้เขาเปิดเนี่ยมันไม่เปลี่ยนอะไรมากละหรือขั้นต่ำภายในเดือน11หรือเดือน12เนี่ยผมว่าเอาจริงผมว่าปีนี้เนี่ยเสียไปแล้วเสียไปแล้วแหละน่าจะช้าไปแล้วเพราะว่าคนส่วนใหญ่เขาน่าจะแพลนกันแล้วเขาน่าจะแพลนกันเรียบร้อยแล้วหรือว่าต่อให้เขาไม่แพลนกันเรียบร้อยแล้วเนี่ยมันก็เป็นส่วนน้อยแล้วเพราะว่าตอนเนี้ยอย่าลืมว่ากฎตอนนี้มันต่อให้บอกว่าโอเคเปิดประเทศแล้วอะไรแล้วมันก็ยังมีคอนโทรลมีอะไรอยู่ในระดับหนึ่งเช่นอยู่เข้ามาถึงวันแรกอยู่ก็ลงมาเสร็จปั๊บอยู่ก็ต้องโดนจิ้มจมูกอยู่ครั้งหนึ่งขั้นต่ำก็ต้องขอสักครั้งหนึ่งก็ยังดีใช่ไหมเขายังมีจิ้มจมูกอยู่แล้วอยู่ก็ต้องไปควอรันทีนก่อนหนึ่งคืนอยู่ดีอะไรอย่างเงี้ยครับคือมันยังมีอะไรพวกนี้อยู่ซึ่งถ้าคุณดูประเทศอื่นเนี่ยเขาไม่มีเลยเขาน้อยมากโอเคบางประเทศก็ยังมีอยู่นะแต่ว่าประเทศที่ผมมองว่าประเทศที่เขาทำให้ตรงนี้มันหายไปแล้วเนี่ยเขาก็มี advantage ยังไงเขาก็จะมี advantage ฉะนั้นแต่ต่อให้บอกว่าโอเคแต่แล้วถ้าเราทำให้แม่งไม่มีอะไรเลยกลับเข้ามาทุกอย่างเปิดได้ปกติผมว่ามันก็อาจจะช้าไปแล้วอยู่ดีเพราะว่าอย่างที่ผมบอกไปว่าคนหลายๆคนเขาแพลนกันไปแล้วเพราะคนหลายๆคนเขาแพลนกันไปแล้วผมคิดว่าอย่างนั้นนะแต่ก็ไม่ได้แปลว่าไม่ได้อย่างที่คิรันเขาบอกว่าโรงแรมเขาเนี่ยช่วงประมาณthe second half of December right the second half of December ที่บอกว่า occupancy might be somewhere around 40-50% so it means that เฮ้ยยังไงมันก็ยังมีการเริ่มกลับมา but however Kieran's hotel is very different เพราะว่า Kieran's hotel เขาทำงานกับเอเจนซี่หมายความว่าเอเจนซี่พวกนี้ they're constantly looking they're constantly searching ว่าเฮ้ยแม่งเปิดแล้วรัฐบาลเปิดแล้วไปเที่ยวได้แล้วอะไรได้แล้ว so the second they find out เนี่ยเขาเริ่มหาลูกค้าแล้วนั่นคือเหตุผลที่ทำไม Kieran ตอนนี้ถึงมีคนจองแล้วแต่สำหรับโรงแรมธรรมดาหรือธุรกิจธรรมดาที่ต้องไปหาลูกค้าเองหรือต้องโปรโมทเองต้องอะไรเองเนี่ยโอ้ยอันนี้ก็ยากอยู่นะใช่ไหมเพราะว่ามันเป็นคนละมาร์เก็ตติ้งกันเหมือนที่ Kieran เขาบอกว่าเขาไม่เคยต้องทำมาร์เก็ตติ้งอะไรเลยเพราะเขาจัดการกับเอเจนซี่มันเป็นคนละ playing field แต่ว่าก็ hopeful ก็ผมก็ว่าหวังว่ามันจะเป็นก็มัน at least it's a step in the right direction we can put it that way
ครับ
ครับผม
ขอบคุณครับ
อักษราภาพก่อน
พี่คะระหว่างแบบระหว่างพี่ที่อยู่ที่ตอนที่พี่แบบtravel in the US อะค่ะเหมือนกับว่ามันจะมีเคสไหมคะที่แบบว่าtourist got the vaccination ที่แบบว่าอย่างเช่นอเมริกาเนี่ยค่ะแล้วเขาแบบว่าเกิดแบบว่า got side effect อะค่ะ side effect ที่แบบค่อนข้างหนักอะไรอย่างเงี้ยตัวในประเทศอย่างเงี้ยค่ะเขาจะ offer ส่วนนี้ให้กับกลุ่ม tourist ตรงนี้หรือเปล่าคะ
offer ครับเขา offer ให้หมดเลยคือโอกาสต้องบอกก่อนว่าโอกาสที่จะมี side effect เนี่ย1 ในล้านคือแบบน้อยมากที่จะมี side effect แล้วต่อให้มีเนี่ยอย่างมากอย่างของผมเนี่ยเข็ม2ผมถือว่าผมมี side effect นะเพราะว่ามันไม่ได้โอเค 100% คนส่วนใหญ่ที่เห็นเนี่ยคือโอเคคือแบบไม่มี effect อะไรเลยอย่างมากแค่แบบแขนตึงๆไปแค่ประมาณ 2-3 วันแต่ของผมเข็ม2เนี่ยผมรู้สึกแบบเคยรู้สึกหมดแรงไหมหมดแรงแบบตื่นขึ้นมาแบบเฮ้ยตื่นขึ้นมากูจะลุกแล้วกูลุกไม่ไหวว่ะอารมณ์นั้นน่ะฉะนั้นเข็ม2ผมโดนไปก็มีนะครับแต่ว่านอนบนเตียงวันนึงมันก็หายแต่ถ้าเกิดว่าคุณโชคดีเป็นพวกแบบอารมณ์1 ในล้านแล้ว side effect สูงทางรัฐเขาจ่ายให้หมดเลยทางรัฐเขาไม่มีคำถามอะไรเลยนะต่อให้เขาสงสัยว่ามันมีโอกาสแค่จะตึ้งนึงเขาจัดให้หมดเลยอย่างที่ผมบอก example ไปอ่ะของเพื่อนแม่ผมคุณไดอาน่าเนี่ยเขามีมินิสโตรกใช่ไหมครับเขามีมินิสโตรกแล้วเขาคิดอยู่แล้วว่ามินิสโตรกเนี่ยน่าจะเป็นจาก genetics เพราะว่าครอบครัวเขาเนี่ยมี past history ของ stroke มาก่อน so she thought it was going to be genetics but during the doctor's visit เราแค่มีพูดขึ้นมามี mention ขึ้นมาว่าwe just had a COVID vaccine นะ just like that หมอบอกว่าโอเคอยู่ไม่ต้อง worry เรื่องบิลละ600,000 บาทเขาเคลียร์ให้เลยคือเขาค่อนข้างจะ accommodating ในระดับหนึ่งแต่ว่าก็อย่าลืมนะว่าโอเค คอสของวัคซีนมันต่ำมากคอสของโดสนึงที่เขา produce ออกมาจริงๆมันต่ำมากเขาลงทุนไปตอนแรกใช่เขาลงทุนไปสูงมากเพื่อที่จะค้นคว้าขึ้นมาแต่พอเขาค้นคว้าขึ้นมาได้แล้วเนี่ย the cost of replication เนี่ยมันต่ำมากใช่ไหมครับแล้วพออันนี้ลูกค้าพอทัวริสต์อะไรเข้ามาเขาแจกเลยเขาให้สบายเลย let's say ว่าโอกาส1ในล้านที่อาจจะซวยขึ้นมาว่าเฮ้ยแม่งดันให้ไปแล้วมี side effect ว่ะต้องไปจ่ายค่ารักษาพยาบาลให้ 20,000 เหรียญเฮ้ย 20,000 เหรียญแม่งเรื่องเล็กทัวริสต์เข้ามากี่คนอ่ะเงินเข้ามาเท่าไหร่แล้วใช่ไหมครับเขาตัดเซี่ยวนึงอันเนี้ยไปจ่ายค่า medical เนี่ยยังไงเขาก็เป็น net positive สำหรับ economy เขาอันนั้นผมคิดอย่างนั้นนะครับผมไม่ได้คิดมันเป็นอย่างนั้นพูดผิดมันเป็นอย่างนั้น
ขอบคุณค่ะ
Okay. Right. Okay. I thought I believe that you get a new knowledge today. Right. Okay.
I hope something.
Okay. So from my perspective, if you look at the tourism industry today, it may be too late for the government to do anything else. But from your opinion, if the government reduce some kind of regulations, would be better comparing to Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia, our neighbors?
Yes. I believe that the fewer regulations, the better in this case, because the more regulations you put in, the less likely it is for people to come, as has been proven.
Yeah. How about from Thai people? The pressure from Thai itself.
That's true. I think one thing that the government could do is to try and tell people, or at least let people understand, let people know that we rely on tourism. The country actually relies on tourism. 1/5 of the GDP is not something to be scoffed at. That's a lot. And it's not only that. Like I said, if this 1/5 is gone, it also affects what? It also affects local consumption. Local consumption is also something that the GDP matters, right? Right now, export is a little bit better. For one, we need supply chain disruption around the world, so our export is going up by a little bit. But in general, export import ของไทย we don't have any high value export. We have agriculture. Agriculture เป็นอะไรที่ มันเป็น 1:1 ratio ใช่ไหมครับคือ we rely heavily on tourism, so we really have to push that. I think we have to push it a lot more. Regulations will only serve to hinder us, and I think it's even more important that the government educates the people and let people understand that tourists are not to be scared, that it's okay for them to come in and we should let them come in.
Right. So that means in the near future, the new normal of the tourists will refer to upper class tourists, isn't it?
That's another thing that I don't agree with. When the government said that we want upper class tourists, that we want high class tourists, we are, like I said, we're not necessarily a world class tourist spot, right? We are in a way because we have our culture to provide, our services there, but the infrastructure isn't there. The infrastructure, the transportation and all of that, it's not there. And I think what's more important is if we're going to be frank, a lot of people come into Thailand. When they come in Thailand, what do they party, right? Nightlife is something that is popular here, right? Up in Myeong Put, we have all kinds.ใช่ไหมครับอะไรอย่างเงี้ย so if we're talking actual high class tourists, people with real money, they actually might not come to Thailand. They might go to Europe. They might go to France. They might go to different places. They might go to Bahamas. They have other options as well. So we cannot actually just target that we only want the rich countries, that we only want the rich people. You know what that means when you say that? When you say that out loud in public, มันหมายความว่าอยู่กำลังไปบอกคนที่รวยว่ามึงมานี่กูจะถอนขนมึงว่าบ้านเราแพงใช่ไหมอีกอย่างหนึ่งก็คือมันกลายเป็นว่าแล้วคนที่เขาเป็นแบบเป็น backpacker หรือว่าเป็น middle class tourist หรือว่าอาจจะเป็น tourist ที่แบบที่เขาอาจจะไม่ได้รวยในประเทศเขาแต่พอเขาแปลงค่าเงินมาแล้วพอเขามาอยู่ที่ไทยแล้วใช้ชีวิตอยู่แบบกินก๋วยเตี๋ยวกันอะไรอร่อยอยู่ภูเก็ตอยู่อะไรอย่างนี้มันกลายเป็นว่าของมันถูกลงกลายเป็นว่าเขาเหมือนกับดูมีเงินที่นี่แต่เอาจริงไม่ได้แปลว่าเขารวย if we're a country that relies on tourism, we should be encouraging all kinds of tourism, not alienate, not picking. เราไม่ควรจะเลือกว่าเราจะเลือกแค่ top 5% of tourists because the top 5% of tourists also have other options. And by alienating that, by only saying that we're going to pick the top 5%, it means that we're telling the other 95% to F off, basically. So I think we should target all kinds of tourists. Even if there's any policy to try and encourage countries with more money to come in, I don't think it should be said publicly. Right. I don't think they should come out and say it, because like I said, when they come out and say it, it's only going to hurt them. You're telling the rich people that we're expensive and we're going to take their money, and you're telling the middle class tourists that we don't want you.
Yes, but for those procedures to come to Thailand, okay, the COVID test, RT-PCR 3 times, accommodation to be paid, etc. Those add up the cost of the tourists. So those backpackers may not be able to come and enjoy in Thailand.
Exactly. And that's why, and the comments, some comments, I didn't read them out. I just put them on there, just, but if you go and look at those comments, you will see people are saying that this is not the time, that it's too expensive. Too expensive, not because the country is expensive, too expensive because of all of these things are added to it. Too expensive because the flights are getting more expensive. Too expensive because the swab tests, they have to pay out of their own pocket. Too expensive because of the insurance, that they have insurance but they can't use, right? All of these things, these are only making it harder. Even the hotel, the car ride from the airport when I landed in Phuket, ค่ารถเนี่ยที่ผมนั่งจากสถานบินแอร์พอร์ตมาที่โรงแรมเนี่ยค่ารถนั้นน่ะก็โดนไปเป็นพันกว่าบาท แล้วระหว่างทางผมบอกเฮ้ยแวะเซเว่นนิดนึงได้ไหม like เขาบอกไม่ได้ทำอย่างกับเป็นคนยังนักเป็นเขาเรียกว่าอะไรเป็นนักโทษเป็น prisoner อ่ะยังไม่ได้เลยแล้วอันนั้นก็อะไรเขาก็เก็บไปอีกค่าโดนค่ารถไปอีก1,000 กว่าบาทอะไรอย่างเงี้ยครับคือมัน the more obstacles you put in, the more costs, and the more costs ใช่ไหมครับถ้าราคามันสูงขึ้นคนที่ afford ที่จะมาได้ก็น้อยลงแต่มันไม่ใช่แค่เรื่อง affordability อย่างเดียว affordability คือ one thing คือเขาไม่มีเงินมากพอที่จะมาจ่ายเครื่องทิ้งแบบนี้แต่อีกอันนึงก็คือว่าต่อให้บางคนเขามีเงินเขาก็มองว่ากูขี้เกียจทำเพราะกูทำไม่เป็นถ้ามันทำง่ายมันไม่มี service ออนไลน์ขึ้นมาบอกว่าเอา charge you $200 6,000 บาทเดี๋ยวนะกูเก็บมึง 6,000 บาทนะแต่เดี๋ยวทำ COE ให้ถ้ามันทำง่ายมันไม่มี service ขึ้นมาแล้วครับดังนั้นคนบางคนบอกว่าเฮ้ยโอเค you know what ก็จ้าง service ไปเลยว่า yeah 6,000 บาท more if you want to pay if you can pay sure you can pay but to normal backpackers to normal tourists
yeah 6,000 baht refer to maybe 10 nights in Bangkok
ใช่ that's a lot so why are we pushing them out? We are a country that relies on tourism and we are discouraging tourism. It doesn't make sense.
So how about those academicians that they are going to say that those obstacles refer to the war to protect the Thai people?
It's too late to protect. Like I said, we already have COVID. Look at our cases. In the past month, in the past 2 months, our cases have been what? 10-20,000 ตอนนี้ official number เท่าไหร่ครับ2 ล้านอันนั้นคือ official number นะ What's the unofficial number? What's the unofficial number? 4, 5 million? 1 ใน 10 เหรอเดินไปเจอ10 คนที่ติดโควิดคนนึงแล้วอ่ะ
we know what they want us to know
ใช่ we know what so that's why it's very important to question everything you hear. It's very important to when somebody tells you something, even when I'm telling you something right now, you should be questioning. But who the fuck is this? Who the hell is this guy? Right? who the hell is this guy? Why should I listen to him? Or when Kieran says something, or when the government tells you something, it's very important for you to actually go and find another source, right? Find another source, listen to it, and then have your own opinion. Don't listen blindly and believe. That's one thing. แล้วก็ another thing ก็คือที่บอกไปแล้วว่าit's already too late. We already have the cases in here. If it's in the very beginning and we don't have anyone and we have 0 case, มันไม่ใช่แล้ว like I said, if anything, tourists that are coming in, they are actually safer. They actually have to be more scared when they're in Thailand. เพราะว่า 1เขาวัคซีนของประเทศเขาอาจจะดีกว่า2เขาฉีดมาแล้ว3เขาตรวจมาแล้ว4เรทที่เรามีเก็บ data มาคือ 0.03% ที่คนที่เข้ามาเขาติด 0.03%ส 0.3% อยู่กันงบตรงนี้มา take care พวก 0.03% ตรงนี้ยังได้เลยแต่ when you look at the economy you have to look at it from a big picture and from the big picture what does it mean? It means that hey, if you can have millions and millions and millions of tourists coming in, if you want to do the numbers, you can crunch around the numbers. If you want to have a lot of tourists coming in, if 0.03% if they have COVID, so what? แล้วไงวะแล้วไงอ่ะผมมองมันเป็นอย่างนั้นไปแล้วนะคือ we have to encourage tourism. We shouldn't be discouraging it. And the government definitely shouldn't. I don't think the government should be telling people to be scared of tourists because the people rely on tourism. You might say that, no, I work in an office. I ไม่ได้ทำงานเกี่ยวกับ tourists อยากให้เขาเข้ามาเลยเพราะว่า my life is not affected. I don't have a hotel. I don't have a restaurant. I ไม่ได้ทำร้านนวด My life is not directly affected. You're not directly affected, but you're indirectly affected.
Yes.
We all are. My friends and I, we have a project together that we've been talking about, and we have launched it a certain way, and we were all prepared to invest money, and we were already talking about the amount of shares everybody's going to get, and now we're putting that project on hold. Why? Because because we believe that the economy might be a little bit too, right? So it's the big picture. It's a big picture. We're in it together. We're in the same country. The GDP belongs to all of us. It's ต้องช่วยกัน.
Yes, and my last question, you and Karen also talk about the domestic tourists. Okay, so can we rely on this instead of international tourists?
No. We can't rely on local tourists. The local tourists would be something to keep people afloat in the meantime, to keep them so that a lot of businesses right now are on survival mode.
You don't believe in purchasing power of those people?
No, I do believe that they have purchasing power, but that doesn't mean that we have to discourage, or that doesn't mean that we can only be reliant on the local purchasing power.
But itself, as a whole country.
As a whole country, I still don't think it's enough. We have purchasing power here. We have local tourists, yes, but if we want to do a numbers game, a very simple numbers game is, let's say the majority of people with power to spend, let's say they're concentrated in Bangkok, okay? Or maybe in Chiang Mai or around. But let's say Bangkok. What's the population of Bangkok? 10 million, 13 million, I think 10 million ใช่ไหมครับ Let's say 10 million ตรงเนี้ยผมให้เว่อร์เลยผมให้แบบว่า 80% เลยเป็นคนมีตังค์มันไม่ใช่อยู่แล้วใช่ไหมครับ Just looking at that alone, then we're talking about a country, a market of 8 million people versus a market of 7 billion. No matter what, we can't rely solely on Thai tourism. We can leverage it. We can work more towards it while we're waiting for big tourism to come back. But we cannot be content with just Thai tourism. It's impossible. We should not be. It's not feasible. If you're in business, if you do a feasibility study, you will know immediately that it's not going to work.
Understand. Thank you. Right. Okay. How about students? Do you have any other questions? Prathom. Okay. Let's hear from Prathom.
อาจารย์ได้ยินเสียงไหมคะ
Yes.
โอเคสวัสดีค่ะคือเหมือนเราพูดถึงทัวริสต์กันมาใช่ไหมคะทีนี้หนูอยากจะแบบว่าในมุมของคนที่ทำงานเป็นเหมือนทำงานแบบ hospitality industry แบบว่า daily เลยหรือจะมีแบบว่าวันหยุดแค่แบบ 1-2 วันper week เงี้ยแล้วหลังจากนี้มันจะมีแบบ is there anything change for them like a whole picture อะค่ะว่าอย่างคนทำงานทั่วไปคือมี work from home เนี้ยเขาก็แบบไปทำงานที่ไหนก็ได้แล้วอย่างคนพวกนี้ล่ะค่ะเขาจะแบบว่าเขามีอะไรจะเปลี่ยนไปไหมหรือถามคุณพี่ก็ได้อย่างคุณพี่เปิดร้านอาหารใช่ไหมคุณพี่มีแบบว่าอะไรตรงนี้ให้กับพนักงานของตัวเองไหมการที่จะแบบว่า make sure ให้เขาว่าถ้าเกิดเขาทำงานตรงนี้เขาก็จะไม่ได้ติดโควิดหรือว่าอะไรอย่างเงี้ย
ก็คือเดี๋ยวนะครับผมขอ refresh คำถามเนาะจะได้เข้าใจก่อนเนาะจะได้เอาให้ชัวร์ก็คือว่ามีอารมณ์เหมือนกับว่ามีมาตรการอะไรยังไงให้คนที่ทำงานอยู่ใน hospitality industry make sure ว่าเขาไม่ติดโควิดถูกไหมว่าเขามาทำงานเจอคนทำนู่นทำนั่นจะทำยังไงให้เขาเซฟจากโควิดถูกไหม
ใช่ค่ะ
ฉีดวัคซีนครับคือมันก็ใช้เวลาใช่แต่โอเคคำถามง่ายๆอันแรกก็คือก็ฉีดวัคซีนใช่ไหมก็ป้องกันตัวเองใช่ไหมครับทีนี้โอเคอาจจะบอกว่า แล้ววัคซีนตัวไหนวัคซีนแต่ละตัว efficacy ไม่เหมือนกันโอเคอันนี้ก็ขึ้นอยู่กับว่ารัฐบาลเราให้อะไรมาหรือว่าเราสามารถหา get our hands on vaccine อะไรได้บ้างใช่ไหมครับอันแรกก็คือวัคซีนอันที่สองก็คือมันเป็นอะไรที่ทุกคนเองก็ต้องเริ่มใส่ใจแล้วก็ต้องเริ่ม realize ว่า it's also you can't ask the world to wait for you anymore you can't บอกว่าเฮ้ยแต่ว่าถ้าฉันไปทำงานแล้วฉันเสี่ยงนี่หว่าดังนั้นฉันไม่ทำเดี๋ยวฉันไปทำงานแล้วฉันเสี่ยงนี่หว่าฉะนั้นต้องปิดไปให้หมดเพราะว่ามันจะกลายเป็น endemic คำว่า endemic หมายความว่าทุกปีมันอาจจะมีการ mutate ไปเรื่อยๆตอนนี้เป็น delta ใช่ไหมครับโอมิครอนก็ขึ้นมาแล้วอนาคตอาจจะเป็นไอดาเซดาใช่ไหมอาจจะเป็นไอโอดาก็ได้คือมันขึ้นอนาคตกรีกอัลฟาเบตหมดอาจจะเป็นอัลฟาเบต้าต่อไปก็ได้อาจจะเป็นอัลฟาเดลต้าก็ได้ใช่ไหมคือมันไปเรื่อยๆทีเนี้ยเราก็ต้อง realize ว่าโอเคแล้วตัวเราเองเนี่ยทำอะไรได้บ้างที่จะใช้ชีวิตอยู่กับมันไปโอเคคุณก็ล้างมือบ่อยขึ้นคุณฉีดวัคซีนแล้วดีไม่ดีคุณติดโควิดไปยิ่งดีเข้าไปอีกเพราะคุณฉีดแล้วต่อให้คุณติดไปเนี่ยคุณไม่เป็นไรหรอกอย่างมากก็นอนอยู่บ้านวันนึงวันรุ่งขึ้นก็หายพูดตรงๆนะผมมีความรู้สึกว่าตัวผมเองติดไปแล้วด้วยซ้ำจริงๆนะแต่ติดไปแล้วหมายความว่าไงติดไปแล้วหมายความว่าคุณมีทั้งแอนติบอดีที่ขึ้นมาของร่างกายที่มันเป็นจากการฉีดวัคซีนแล้วก็มีของที่มันเป็น natural immunity ที่ขึ้นมาเพราะว่าคุณติดไปแล้วถูกไหมมันกลายเป็นว่าเอางี้ผมว่านะ eventually ทุกคนก็ต้องติดโควิดถึงจุดหนึ่งทุกคนก็ติดหมดมันหนีไม่พ้นหรอกแล้วพอถึงจุดนั้นแล้วเนี่ยเราก็ต้องหาวิธีใช้ชีวิตกับมันไปคือตอนนี้ถ้าจะบอกว่าเฮ้ยแต่มันยังน่ากลัวอยู่นะออกไปเดี๋ยวติดนะอะไรนะก็ป้องกันตัวเองฉีดวัคซีนแต่ว่าเราไม่สามารถปิดเศรษฐกิจได้อีกต่อไปแล้วเพราะว่าผลระยะยาวมันหนักกว่าที่ผมบอกไปคร่าวๆก็มันเป็นตัวเลขคร่าวๆนะอย่างที่ผมบอกไปว่า1 ใน 5ของ GDP เนี่ยเท่ากับ3 ล้านล้านหายมาแล้ว2 ปีก็6 ล้านล้านรัฐบาลกู้เพิ่มมาอีก4 ล้านล้านตอนนี้ก็กลายเป็น10 ล้านล้าน10 ล้านล้านนี่ก็เป็นหนี้ที่เราแบกอยู่ถ้าเราปิดอีโคโนมีเป็นอย่างนี้ไปเรื่อยๆมันก็ไม่ทันแล้วมันหนักเข้าไปอีกเศรษฐกิจมันต้องเดิน
ใช่นี่ท่วมหัวเราแล้วค่ะ
ใช่ครับ
นี่เด็กจบไปก็มีหนี้ต่อหัวแล้วนะคะ But if you're afraid of finding a job, I don't think you're gonna have the problem.
ใช่ครับใช่หาได้
แล้วก็คนที่ lay off ไปแล้วเขาก็ไปเปลี่ยนอาชีพแล้วด้วยสิ่งที่ปูมองนะ
ใช่ครับอันนั้นก็อย่างหนึ่งแต่อันนั้นก็เป็นอีก point นึงที่ผมมองว่าก็ค่อนข้างจะไม่ผมมองว่าตั้งแต่แรกไม่ควรปล่อยให้เขา lay off ไปขนาดนั้นอยู่แล้วเพราะว่าตอนนี้อย่างสมมติแอร์ไลน์อย่างเงี้ยครับที่คนโดน lay off ไปเท่าไหร่เนี่ยถ้าแอร์ไลน์จะกลับมาเปิดตอนนี้1คือยูไม่มีการันตีว่ายูจะเรียกพนักงานพวกนั้นกลับมาได้ยูก็ต้องเทรนเขาใหม่ต่อให้คนเก่ากลับมาก็ต้องไป refresh เขาต้องไปเทรนเขาใหม่หรือว่าคนที่เป็นคนใหม่มาเลยยูก็ต้องไปเทรนเขาอีกค่าเทรนพนักงานพวกนี้ใช้เงินเท่าไหร่ใช้อะไรเท่าไหร่คือมันเป็นผลที่กระทบระยะยาวแล้วผมถึงมองว่าตอนนี้เรามองแค่ว่าเฮ้ยแต่โควิดมันยังอยู่นะมันยังน่ากลัวอยู่นะมันอะไรอย่างเงี้ยผมมองว่าเรามองอย่างนั้นไม่ได้แล้วมันต้องหาวิธีที่จะใช้ชีวิตอยู่กับมันไปแล้วก็เอาเศรษฐกิจกลับคืนมาดีกว่าสิงคโปร์อย่างเงี้ยครับสิงคโปร์เขาเสียทัวริสต์เขาแค่ประมาณไม่ถึง 50% นะเพราะว่าตัวหัวหน้าประเทศเขาออกมาบอกคนทั้งประเทศเลยว่าเข้าใจแต่ว่าเราต้องหาวิธีอยู่ไปกับมันเราต้องเปิดเราต้องเขาพูดให้คนเข้าใจว่าเราปิดอย่างนี้ไปเรื่อยๆไม่ได้เพราะว่าผลที่กระทบต่อเศรษฐกิจเนี่ยมันหนักกว่า
โอเคคิดว่าชุ่มชื่นในมันสมองกันทุกคนเลยนะคะสายตาที่เตรียมพร้อมกับข้อสอบของอาจารย์ปูแน่นอนนะคะโอเค
น่าจะพอจะได้
ขอบคุณน้องโหมากๆขอบคุณที่กรุณานะคะ
ครับผมน้องปูยินดีครับ
ค่ะก็หวังว่าเด็กๆจะชอบแล้วก็ได้ไอเดียใหม่ๆนะคะในมุมมองของโมเดิร์นentrepreneurด้วยเนาะว่าผู้ประกอบการใหม่ๆในยุคปัจจุบันจะเป็นยังไงนะคะก็ขอบคุณมากเลย
ถ้ามีคำถามมีอะไรยังไงอยากติดต่ออยากลิงก์กันอยากอะไรยังไงก็ทักมาได้นะครับแอดมาได้
เรานัดเจอกันที่พระราม 9ได้ไหมคะ เดี๋ยวจะพาเด็กพวกนี้ไปปัดชิมหน่อยค่ะ
เอาเลย
เดี๋ยวไปสกิดประธานก่อนนะคะขอเลี้ยงเด็กสัก40 คนค่ะได้ค่ะงั้นก็ขอบคุณเวลาของโอ้โหมากๆเลยนะคะ
ครับผมยินดีครับ
ค่ะขอบคุณค่ะสวัสดีนะคะ
ครับผมสวัสดีครับ